Hi, everybody. This is Law School Secret Series, a special. I'm calling this one an emergency cram exam sheet for criminal law. I'm going to cram in 15 minutes what you should have memorized for a criminal law exam at the end of the semester. So, anyhow, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. Thanks for liking, sharing, and subscribing. And remember, as always, be the change you wish to see in the world, as Gandhi would say. And here's a quick message again. This is your criminal law emergency exam cram, as I call it. Now, as always, you need to do your due diligence. And I just put a quick list here of what you need to do for your due diligence for your studying. But sometimes life happens, things come in the way, and you need to cram. Now, what do you need to know? This is the basics, criminal elements of a crime, right? We always have to know this. We fall back on this. When you're analyzing, you fall back on it. And here's a suggested outer outline for your list, and here is your cheat sheet as promised. Okay, so first you're going to put down your fundamental elements of the crime. Your mind, your state of your mental state, your conduct, your concurrence between the two, then causation, and finally the resulting crime. There's several categories of crimes. You might want to make a abbreviation. For example, if you pop over here to the inchoate crimes, you could put SAC crimes, SAC, down on your paper if you're doing an essay. And then over on number 3, BARRM, KSS, burglary, arson, rape, robbery, mayhem, kidnapping, sodomy. So when you got an essay exam, you quickly jot down a few notes to yourself so you can keep your head straight. You put down fundamentals, and then you put the fundamentals, and you know the fundamentals are the 5 things, and then you categorize, well, what's going on in this fact pattern. Is it a theft? All the different things. Okay, so here's what you want to memorize. You want to memorize your definitions, and then you have to ask yourself, is it this? If you've got an essay, you're going to look for all the elements in the essay or in your fact pattern, and if something's missing, then it's not. So anyway, vicarious liability would be one who's liable for the actions of another based on the relationship between the parties. You've got your accomplice, a person who aids in any way in the commission or concealment of a crime. Then you've got your accessory, that's usually liable as a principal only if the crime is a felony, not generally at the scene. And then you've got solicitation, that's when one entices, encourages, or requests another to do an unlawful act. Finally, you've got the attempt crimes, the SLAP crimes, SLAP. Substantial act toward the completion of a crime requires specific intent, legal or factual impossibility, and apparent ability beyond mere preparation toward actual preparation of committing the intended crime. Conspiracy. A conspiracy is an agreement between 2 or more persons to commit an unlawful act or a lawful act by unlawful means. Pinkerton's rule, conspirators are held liable for all offenses committed to the furtherance of the conspiracy. Wharton's rule is for crimes which require a minimum of 2 parties to commit the offense. There can be no conspiracy if there's only 2 parties involved. Withdrawal, abandonment. Defendant terminates participation prior to the crime and their actions had not contributed to the crime, or the defendant notified the law enforcement in time to prevent the crime. Homicide is the killing of one human being by another human being. There's the actual cause, but for the defendant's acts, the result would not have occurred. The defendant in the actual cause of the is the actual cause of the victim's death. Proximate cause, legal cause, is foreseeable that the defendant's acts could have created the result. Thus, the defendant is the proximate cause of the victim's death. Murder is the unlawful homicide with malice aforethought. Malice may be demonstrated by 1. Intent to kill, 2. Intent to cause serious bodily harm, or 3. Reckless, wanton disregard for high risk to human life, depraved heart. Felony murder rule, FMR, whereby an unintentional death occurs during the commission of an inherently dangerous felony. First-degree murder, murder committed with the specific intent to kill, deliberation, and premeditation. Second-degree murder is murder which is not murder in the first degree. Mitigation. Consider the defenses for mitigation. All of them. Anyhow, heat of passion. Killing must have followed provocation before the defendant had the opportunity to cool off. Provocation is a reasonable person would have been provoked, and the defendant must have been provoked. Cool off. Reasonable person would not have been able to cool off, and the defendant must not have cooled off. Voluntary manslaughter. Intended unlawful homicide without malice aforethought. Unintentional killing, involuntary manslaughter, unintentional killing without malice aforethought. It's an accidental homicide. Misdemeanor manslaughter, a killing without malice committed during an unlawful act not amounting to a felony. Assault. Intentional, placing of another in the apprehension of imminent, harmful, or offensive touching without privilege or consent. Battery is the unlawful, willful, and offensive touching of the person of another. There are 3 elements: willful and unlawful, use of force or violence against another, intentional, harmful, offensive touching of another without privilege and consent. Kidnapping. Intentional moving of a person from one place to another without privilege or consent. Any distance counts depending on the jurisdiction. And asportation is a key word with that. False imprisonment, intentional physical or psychological confinement of another without privilege or consent. Rape. Rape is the unlawful sexual intercourse committed by a man with a woman, not his wife, through force, without consent. Modernly, marital status and gender are often irrelevant. Arson. Malicious burning of a dwelling house of another. Modernly, any structure. Burglary. Breaking and entering into the dwelling of a house of another in the nighttime with specific intent to commit a felony therein. Modernly, trespassory taking, entering into any structure with intent to commit any crime, larceny will do. Inner room. Or inner door, excuse me. It's an expression for, let's say I grant you access to my home, but you break into a hallway closet. Larceny. Larceny is the trespassory taking and the carrying away of the personal property of another with the specific intent to permanently deprive. By innocent agent. Have an innocent person commit a larceny for you. They would be ignorant as to the deed. Larceny by trick. Larceny which is non-trespassory in nature with the victim's permission obtained by deceit. Embezzlement. Fraudulent conversion of rightfully entrusted personal property. False pretenses. Obtaining title by means of false representation of fact with the intent to defraud. Robbery. Larceny from the person by means of force or intimidation. Receiving stolen property. Acquiring or controlling property known to have been stolen. Merger rule. Lesser included offenses merge into the greater offense. Misprison. This is concealment of a known felony of another. Forgery. The fraudulent making or altering of writing with the intent to defraud or deceive. Misrepresentation. Making a false representation of fact without regard to truth intended to induce party to detrimentally rely upon it. Malicious mischief. Malicious destruction or defacement of another's property. Acts array, the physical aspect of the crime. Mens rea. Defendant's state of mind at the time they commit the crime. Uttering. Offering as genuine an instrument known to be false with the intent to deceive. Insanity. Here's the abbreviation for it. MIMDI. McNaughton rule. Defendant does not know the nature or quality of their act or does not know that the act was wrong, its legal or moral aspects. Irresistible impulse. Defendant lacks the ability to control their conduct. Model Penal Code, MPC. Due to the mental disease or defect in reasoning, the defendant lacks the substantial capacity to conform their conduct to the law or appreciate the wrongfulness of their conduct. Diminished capacity, an impaired mental condition short of insanity which caused by intoxication, trauma, or disease, and which prevents the person from having a mental state necessary to be held liable for the crime. Infancy, due to age, incapacity to commit a crime, usually 0 to 6, rebuttable presumption between 7 and 14, or juvenile, adult over 14. Intoxication, there's involuntary and voluntary. Involuntary is an affirmative defense to any criminal or negligent charge, not just specific intent. And then voluntary is used to negate specific intent crimes. Consent. Because consent was given freely, there was no crime. Crime prevention. Reasonable use of non-deadly force to prevent a crime. Imperfect self-defense. The use of force by one who makes an honest but unreasonable mistake that force was necessary to counter an attack. Defense of self. Reasonable force necessary to protect oneself up to and including the use of deadly force. Defense of others. Reasonable force necessary to protect others with whom the defendant has a special relationship up to and including the use of deadly force, modernly to protect anyone. Defense of property. Reasonable, non-deadly force necessary to protect one's chattel. Necessity. A person is privileged to enter a land or interfere with the chattels of another if it is necessary to protect the person from death or serious bodily harm. Mistake of fact may be used to mitigate the required mens rea necessary to be held liable for a crime. Mistake of law. No defense under common law. Possible defense under MPC. Duress. The defendant reasonably believed that unless they committed the crime, that they or some third person would suffer imminent death or serious bodily harm by the perpetrator. Force placed upon the person's mind. Traditionally not available as a defense if the defendant is charged with intentional killing such as murder, voluntary manslaughter. To be continued. So this is your quick cheat sheet. It's under 15 minutes. It's actually about 12. And here's some of my references. And I just want to thank you. Share, like, and subscribe. I hope this helps you out. And I hope you have studied diligently and you do well. This is just a quick overview and a quick cheat sheet. Thanks and have a great day.